See how things are, right, my friends Ellis? They try everything to convince Brazilian society that the people have forgotten Bolsonaro, that Bolsonaro is forgotten, that Bolsonaro is finished. Well, system journalists, I'll show you here. Already speaking, Bolsonaro is one of the most famous figures in the world, this coming from Globo. Bolsonaro is super famous. There's nothing we can do. Already desperate, journalists from other media outlets like Metropolis are reporting all the absurd things happening with President Bolsonaro. But look, it hurts to say this, because today, if we wanted to solve all these problems in Brazil, look, we have everything we need. The knife and the cheese in our hands. The knife and the cheese in our hands. I'll show you and lay out some situations. Hit that like button. Very good video, but make sure to hit that like button. Come on, come be part of our family by subscribing to the channel. Just so you have an idea, President Bolsonaro, no matter how much the media tries, and it's our job to make people remember. He left 54 billion reais in the treasury. He did his job properly, neatly, and correctly. President Bolsonaro was always very honest about that. He hasn't finished anything, yet there's already a $354 billion deficit, and probably even more, right? Much more. Then you notice the difference. Who was who in this political game? Who was worried about what? Did you hear how President Bolsonaro was removed? I'm gonna say it here. Look, I'll show you. The former Superior Tribunal de Justiça, Minister Eliane Calmon, a great person, very remarkable, that's her. Look, it's a shame she's not a Supreme Court justice, right? What a difference compared to Carmen Lucia, guys, Carmen Lucia. Let's see here, okay? Who came up with this idea? Bolsonaro. The idea for the Zone Improvement Plan Code, Bolsonaro came up with the idea.
The moment he said he was going to turn the court, the Supreme Federal Court, into a constitutional court, the red light went on.
He provoked. And then, at that moment, it started.
To work on a way for this not to happen, Bolsonaro can no longer be president under any circumstances. Who are we going to put in? The left, there was no one else. Everyone was committed. What does he do? Do a poll, the only one left, Lula da Silva, but he's convicted. What do we do?
And we've
already judged a bunch of things about him. What do we do? First, saying that the public prosecutor's office teamed up with Moro to make that collusion. Why don't they team up with the Attorney General to coordinate things? Of course, the judge talks and communicates with the public prosecutor's office, obviously, just like they also talk to the defense. And that's part of it.
It is.
That's when their only chance to save themselves appeared. So, the lifeboat for the Supreme Court's salvation.
I understand. Why did the justices get so desperate about Bolsonaro? I know, we saw it all happen. He alone, my friends, had the courage to do what was right. There were so many atrocities happening. We had the pandemic. Otherwise, President Bolsonaro would have confronted it directly. He was in a situation. Should I try to protect the people? And he did absolutely everything. Even as president, still a hostage again. Remember Bonner? That evil guy would put that square behind to try to criticize, to attack Bolsonaro, those various health secretaries from different states. And there wasn't even a single allied governor. Beating up President Bolsonaro. What a shame, right? And today, 103 days, President Bolsonaro is under house arrest, unable to use social media. We've seen it, right? The absurd news about Jeffrey Epstein in the United States and all that. Mr. Lula called from jail to the guy over there, the recruiter of
women,
who had an island just for sexual purposes, called the guy from jail. He used social media normally. President Bolsonaro can't even use social media. This is absurd. Here, I want you to see this, right? I'm going to get into this issue. Here, Elisa, who's living in exile in the United States, just received asylum, right? She brings up this possibility here, see?
Rio de Janeiro's government should contact the United States immediately. Although it seems like what happened yesterday in Rio de Janeiro, it's not a local problem, it's something continental. This is how the United States is dealing with everything related to drug trafficking and narco-terrorism. That's why they keep a war arsenal in the Caribbean. Primero Comando da Capital and Red Command appear in the American government reports. So it's very important that the Rio government doesn't count on the Brazilian government at this moment. Why? Because the Brazilian government classifies traffickers as victims and factions as non-terrorist groups. Besides, the current government of Brazil is at the epicenter of very serious allegations about narco-socialism, when drug trafficking finances left-wing political groups.
Guys, let me tell you something. We are seeing it. Here in the Caribbean Sea, the largest aircraft carrier in the history of the world belongs to the United States of America, the largest aircraft carrier. That gigantic, beautiful, wonderful thing. Want to see it? I'm trying to get some images here so I can illustrate what we're talking about. Here's the proof. The United States released the images today, right? From the American aircraft carrier, here it is. On the right are parliamentarians. They have everything they need in their hands. At this moment that we're witnessing. Before this, I want to lay out my reasoning. Look here, Sam Puncher. Today, journalist Larissa Rodriguez reports that a counsel from Lula's Ministry of Human Rights, that woman named Mackay, is accused of very serious corruption. She prepares material to counter the end of the prison aid for families of gang members as proposed in the gang bill. The Brazilian government wants to support, with aid, the families of those individuals who committed all those atrocities. Governor Claudio Castro, this one is, Lula is trying to bring him down in every possible way. Look at what our dear Alan Lopes says here. Congressman. He wants to destroy, especially now that he has seen Claudio Castro's popularity.
Lula is outraged at the police in Rio de Janeiro and at Governor Claudio Castro. He just ordered a parallel forensic examination to be carried out by federal police medical examiners because he can't accept the death of the 120 narco-terrorists, which he called disastrous.
Operation.
And a massacre. Massacre, Lula, that's what these traffickers, torturers, and murderers do to people inside the favelas. But Lula doesn't care about the opinion of 90% of the people who live in the favelas. Because for him, what matters is the life of the narco-terrorists and not the life of the people.
That's a big fact. Alan Lopes. Caiado, Zema, Tarcísio, Jorginho Ratinho, and Cláudio Castro. It was so simple. Can you imagine a picture of these 6 governors? They're in Trump's office with President Trump and Marco Rubio. Asking for help? For the states, Lula can't do anything. If the governor asks, Lula can't do anything. He can't stop it or say anything. No, I'm stopping it. That's just what we've seen so far. I'll be honest, I'm not afraid of getting into tricky situations with anyone, no. I'm only seeing Claudio Castro do that. Claudio is being the governor of Rio. Because if the other 5 did that, it would have to be about 6 of them together. They would solve the whole gang. It greatly weakens Lula. He confronts Zondo and shows Trump asking for help, which they provide. They have the biggest spokesperson. Never in history will we have an opportunity like this. Never, never. And then, Our parliamentarians, deputies and senators, go there and bother people at the White House? Because a lot of what's happening here is also because Biden supported everything. Today we know that. Even the CIA was involved. Our deputies and senators. They don't stop bothering us over there. He said like this: look, this gang kicked several residents out of their homes, threatening to kill them. Here, see? It's a young woman who died. She was in a rideshare vehicle. Stray bullet. And there are so many cases like this all over Brazil, my friends. There are many, but there are even more. The United States can manage the situation, while Colombia would handle things in Venezuela if necessary. Imagine the embarrassment for Lula. But if these 6 governors, except for Claudio Castro, 1, 2, Tarcísio as well, I know. He's not really an ally of President Bolsonaro, but let's say he is. Officially, candidates for governor are Zema, Caiado, and Ratinho, not Jorginho, but if they do that, it strengthens President Bolsonaro even more. Voters will notice even more. The right-wing governor is friends with Trump, so that's why they don't act. Because he should already be doing this. He should already be asking for help. It's so easy to solve this. There's an aircraft carrier there, an aircraft carrier here. Now the biggest one in the world. Here, journalists are already explaining how things work. Here he is. Look, Guga Chakra admits it. Bolsonaro is famous all over the world.
Marcelo, if I ask you to name a Hungarian politician, will you say Viktor Orban?
Yes, right.
The Prime Minister of Hungary, we all started hearing a lot about Orban. Hungarians in history, okay.
In the same
context, he managed to become internationally known, like in the case of Orban. Bolsonaro is in the same context. He achieved enormous international prominence during the period he served as president of Brazil. I remember that when he came here to the United Nations General Assembly, he was closely followed.
Then President Bolsonaro's speech. There it is. Look, here in Metropolis. The journalist says Bolsonaro is jailed without evidence.
Much of the evidence didn't exist. So I'm not here making a judgment about being a Bolsonaro supporter or a Partido dos Trabalhadores supporter. I'm not here making a value judgment, but the fact is that it's a trial that is. It's a politicized trial, so it's different. Much of the evidence didn't exist. I'm just sharing my opinion.
Yeah, but I agree with what I say, Lila. I think, in fact, it's a political trial. That's how it is.
Who is more leftist than this guy here? There isn't, right, my friends? If the governors want to, they can solve the whole thing. Look, quick. But wanting is one thing, right? You have to want to do it. Because what are we seeing out there? Leaving President Bolsonaro totally adrift, leaving him when he could really be doing something. It's absurd for them to do that. Guys, who is more leftist than this journalist here? He won't admit that President Bolsonaro is imprisoned with no evidence against him. Not one piece of evidence exists.
There are several points that any lawyer, any law student looks at the Supreme Court's decisions on various subjects and sees that there were several arbitrary actions, several illegalities. Yes,
These are the people talking. Others. Just show this to Trump, that Lula wants to support the guys who died in the operation in Rio de Janeiro. There's nothing else that needs to be said, right? Nothing else is needed. Remember the election campaign? He used to brag.
The only presidential candidate who has the courage to enter a favela without a security vest.
I know Rio de Janeiro. You were recently in the Salguero complex and there wasn't a single police officer by your side, right?
See, just
traffickers. That's how true your
affinity with traffickers is. Just show this to Trump. Smash it over at the White House. Congressmen and senators, don't they understand that they have to do this? Not just leave Eduardo there struggling by himself. Isn't he doing everything he can over there? If they want to, they can solve things, and quickly, that's a fact. Share this video on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Facebook. Smash that like button, smash that button there. Come be part of our family here on the channel. Lots of news, information today here on the channel.